It's a good time to get started then. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. My name is Christine Brown, and I am a Senior Associate Dean of Admission at Providence College, and I'm lucky this evening to be joined by Emily Prevey, Associate Dean for Financial Aid. Um, throughout our series on the different aspects of applying to college, we hope to dispel or just demystify some of what happens as students and families apply to college. And so, certainly the admission and financial aid um, process, financial aid particularly, um, is a bit of a mystery in some ways. And so we're very lucky to have Emily with us this evening to talk us through all the different aspects of applying to financial aid. And I will also touch upon merit scholarships and what that means through your admission process. So I'm going to turn it right over to Emily. We've got a lot to cover tonight. Please feel free to reach out with questions through the Q&A section of the webinar, and I'll be monitoring that throughout. So I'll let you know if that's something that Emily's going to cover over the course of the evening. And I will also be able to leave some time at the end, probably 15 to 20 minutes for your questions and for us to go over those answers. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll hand it right over to Emily.
Thanks, Christine. Welcome, everyone. My name is Emily Prevey, and I am one of the associate directors here in the Office of Financial Aid. I've been a part of the Fryer family for a little over 15 years. I am so happy you decided to join us tonight as you kick off your college search process. Like Christine mentioned, I do have a lot to go over, so let's move right into the slide and view tonight's agenda. All right, going through this material will probably take me maybe 25 to 30 minutes. I will go over what applications are needed and when they are due. I will also explain how financial need is calculated and what types of aid are available. Then I will show you our award letter and how to use it to compare your offers. Christine then will talk about our merit program, and then I will wrap it up with tips and advice before handing it off to all of you for some of your questions. Like Christine said, feel free to enter your questions into the chat box as you think of them. If we can answer them as we go along, we will. If not, we will get to them all at the end. And with that, let's move right into the next slide. So this makes me laugh, and I kind of hope it makes you laugh a little too. I look forward to filling out the FAFSA forms that no one ever. Well, I might be the only person here who would actually be excited to complete one, but let's be honest, no one really wants to complete it. Don't worry, feelings aren't hurt. I know everyone's not going to love it, but I want to impress upon you tonight that completing your applications is really important. Not as exciting as seeing the inside of one of our dorms or learning about our newest major, but completing the step is so important and will help you make a good financial choice. And who knows, maybe one day you will be one of those people who do look forward to completing their aid applications, because just so you know, you do have to do them every single year. Okay, now that that's out of the way and we got a little laugh, let's dive right into the next slide. Okay, here are the big two, FAFSA and CSS Profile. Now, it is possible that a school might have their own internal application for you to complete. It's really not that common anymore, but I just wanted to throw it out there just in case. Also, some schools will collect information from your non-custodial parent to determine your eligibility. And just so you know, Providence College is not one of those schools at this time. So the FAFSA is for all schools, but the CSS Profile is just for some schools, mostly private institutions. When you complete these applications this fall, you will complete the 23-24 versions, and these applications will use information from the 2021 tax year. So that's right, the forms are based on the taxes that you and your family just completed this past spring. So keep track of where you are storing your taxes in your house, or if you use a software like TurboTax, print them out now and keep them in a safe place. In addition to those personal taxes, some schools collect business tax returns. Business tax returns include corporations or partnerships, also known as 1065s or 1120s. Business taxes also include sole proprietorships, also known as a Schedule C, which are found in your personal tax return. Many parents forget this type of business or don't consider it a business because for so many, it's not their main source of income. Even if it's just earning from being an Uber driver or a referee, it's still considered a single owner business. I'm mentioning this here because Providence College is one of those schools. For an award, we require your Fafsa, Css Profile, and business taxes. Now, Fafsa and Css Profile were open on October 1st. That's this Saturday, that's just 2 days away. Now that both applications are about to open, you need to know when to complete them. And this can get a little bit tricky. As I mentioned a few moments ago, not all schools collect the same applications, and not all schools have the same deadlines, and schools can have multiple deadlines based on their application type, whether you apply early action or regular decision. For example, here at Providence, our early action deadline for FAFSA and Css Profile and those business taxes is December 1st. But our deadline for regular decision is February 15th. You need to research each school you are applying to and find out what applications they require and when they require them. You can do this the same time you are looking up the admissions application deadline. So this is really going to be a lot to keep track of. Write everything down, make a chart, do whatever it takes. Just don't submit your applications late. Late applications could mean losing out on thousands of dollars. Okay, so let's move into the next slide and dive a bit deeper into the FAFSA application. This slide covers important things you need to know about the FAFSA. First and foremost, every single school requires the FAFSA, and it takes about 20 to 25 minutes to complete. One of the most important steps to complete your FAFSA is signing it. The FSA ID is the username and password you will need to have in order to sign this form. You create it yourself by using your social security number, date of birth, email address, and phone number. So what does this mean? It means you should not try to create the FSA ID the day you sit down and do your FAFSA. Make sure you do this ahead of time. In fact, you can do it right now. While you cannot complete your FAFSA yet, although you can in 2 days, you can create the FAFSA now, the FAFSA ID now. You will need one for student and one for whichever parent's information is on the application. It is very important that you know that you cannot you cannot use the same email address or phone number when creating multiple FSA IDs. Just like your social and date of birth, the email address and phone number must also be unique. I want to mention this here since I know some students and parents share an email address or create a family one just for the college process. Okay, so the website is fafsa.gov. It is not fafsa.com. That website charges you a fee to complete the application. Remember, FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and you should never be charged to complete this form. In order to get the FAFSA to the schools you're applying to, you'll need a school code. Providence's school code is 003406. After you hit submit, you will get a confirmation email. And then once it's done being processed, you'll get another one with your student aid report, which is a summary of all the information that you submitted. It takes 3 to 5 business days to fully process your FAFSA, as it sends your information to multiple third parties to authenticate it, like the Social Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. Since it does take a few days to process, you must complete the application before the deadline. If you wait and try to complete it the day it's due, the schools will definitely receive it late. Remember, late applications mean possibly losing out on money. One huge improvement that was made in the last few years was the relationship federal student aid made with the IRS. It took years for them to come to any kind of agreement, but I'm really glad that they did. The partnership they created resulted into what is now called the data retrieval tool. This nifty little tool helps tax filers transfer their information from the IRS directly into the FAFSA. When you get to the income section in the FAFSA application, it will ask you if you want to use the data retrieval tool. If you say yes, it opens a new window and redirects you to the IRS, and you answer some security questions. If you get them all right, your tax information loads right in. This is great because it reduces error and the likelihood that your application will get selected for verification. Verification is either random or it's federal student aid flags your application since it thinks that you might have made a mistake. Either way, schools will reach out and collect information, mostly taxes, and help resolve any errors and make sure you get the most aid possible. Okay, so let's slide over to the next slide and dive a bit deeper into the CSS profile. All right, so this slide covers some important things about the profile application. The website is displayed right on the slide and it may look familiar to you. The CSS profile is offered by the College Board, which is the same company that offers the SAT. Since you all have or will take the SAT, hang on to those usernames and passwords because you will need them to log in and complete the CSS profile. Unlike the FAFSA, the profile is not free. The cost for an initial application and to send it to one school is $25. And each additional school after that is $16 a piece. College Board did announce starting last year that the CSS profile would be free to families who have an adjusted gross income less than $100,000. And they are making that determination from your adjusted gross income on your taxes from 2021. Keep in mind, unlike the FAFSA, not every school requires the profile. Again, in general, it's mostly private colleges that want to collect this form. This application is longer and a bit more detailed. It probably would take you about 45 minutes to complete as it asks you for your 2021 tax information, but also asks about your business ownership, retirement contributions, investments in your name, investments in your siblings' names, other real estate, the home you live on, and who lives in your household. These are just to name a few of the differences between the applications. If you use our school code 3693 when you complete your profile, it will be electronically sent to our office. Again, since it can take several days to reach schools, after you submit it, make sure you complete the application before the deadline at the school you're applying to. If you wait and try to complete it the day it's due, schools will definitely receive it late. The Institutional Documentation Service, also known as IDOC, is a service that collects financial documents from you and then will turn around and send them to the schools that you're applying to. This is not the same thing as a CSS profile. IDOC's more like a portal where you upload your information and it turns around and sends to your school. Schools have to pay to have this service, and not all schools do this. Providence is not a school that participates with IDOC. We ask that families send tax documentations directly to us. Make sure you know whether or not a school participates with IDOC. If you assume something and you miss a deadline, you will lose out on some money. All right. Now that you know a little bit more about the FAFSA and the CSS profile, let's move into the next slide and talk about what these applications actually will tell us. All right, there's a lot on this slide, so I'm going to start by focusing on the middle section of the slide first and talk about family contributions. Family contributions are an important piece and help determine your financial aid. Family contributions are derived from all the information you provide on the FAFSA and CSS profile. The FAFSA formula is standard, and your federal family contribution, sometimes called EFC, should be the same at every school. The CSS formula can vary from school to school. The College Board delivers your information as is, and the schools then apply their methodology and create your institutional family contribution. So FAFSA family contribution is the same at every school. CSS family contribution is different between schools. Also, family contributions from the profile are typically different or higher than the federal one, since it looks at and includes more income and asset information than the FAFSA does. Okay, on the left-hand side of the slide, you will now see cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is made up of your direct costs and your indirect costs. Direct costs are things like tuition, fees, room and board, the things that you would typically see on your bill. But indirect costs are things like your books or transportations or personal expenses, things that aren't on your bill, but you are still paying for. The cost of attendance is sometimes called the sticker price or the true cost of the college for 1 year. You want to take your sticker price or your cost of attendance, you want to subtract out your family contribution, and the result is what you need from the college in order to go there. This is called your financial need. For example, if the cost of attendance is $50,000 and your family contribution is $40,000, then the need you have is $10,000. Schools will then try to offer you $10,000 in resource, meeting all of your need. Sometimes schools don't have the resources to meet 100% of your need. In those cases, the remaining amount is called a gap. I want to point out, in some schools like Providence, there are really two family contributions at play. We first determine your financial need by using the cost of attendance and subtracting out your federal family contribution from the FAFSA. We use that financial need and offer you your federal assistance based on federal rules. Then we take the cost of attendance again and subtract out the institutional family contribution from the Css Profile. We use that level of financial need and offer you the most institutional assistance we can based on our policies and available resources. There's a lot in that slide, and I'm sure that many of you will have questions about that later. Just drop the questions in the Q&A box or hold them to the end. I'll be happy to readdress or go over any of those pieces. But for now, let's go on to the next slide. So let's talk a bit more about what schools will offer you to fill that financial need. There are four main categories, and they are listed right here on the slide: grants, scholarships, work opportunities, and loans. And as we move on to the next slide, this is going to go into much more detail. So let's talk about the detail of scholarships first. Scholarships are resources that do not have to be repaid. They can be based on a student's athletic talent or academic achievements prior to entering college. These resources tend to come with contracts that you have to sign. Contracts have stipulations and requirements that you must agree to meet. If you meet the terms and conditions in your contract you signed, then it'll be guaranteed and renewed every year. In a couple of slides from now, Christine will talk a little bit more about Providence's merit-based scholarship program. The other type of scholarships are called outside scholarships because you apply and earn them before even coming here. They typically are just one-time resources meant to help you transition into your first year of college. When you apply for them, please watch out for scams and only use reputable search engines. Places like collegeboard.com, collegeanswer.com, CollegeNet, FastWeb, those are all examples of good online search engines. There are definitely some sites that are scams. If anybody offers you $500 and promises you they can turn it into $5,000, they are scams, and stay away from those kinds of offers. So next up are grants. Grants are need-based and also don't have to be repaid. However, unlike merit or athletic-based funding, this type of money is not guaranteed. If your information on your applications change from year to year, then so could the amount of resources you get from the college. I want to make note here that the biggest influence on a family contribution right now is number in college. For example, if a family contribution is $20,000, but you have two in college, half of the family contribution is assigned to each student, and schools individually use $10,000 family contribution to determine financial need and aid for each of your students at each of those schools. When one of those students exits colleges or graduates, your family contribution is still $20,000, but now the whole amount is assigned just to that remaining student. When that family contribution on the remaining student increases from $10,000 to $20,000 in the year after the other student exits or graduates, it will reduce need-based aid. We get a lot of questions about this, and many families are quite surprised because they don't always realize the impact just one item can have on their overall financial need and renewed aid in the following year. So that slide covers monies that don't have to be repaid. Let's move to the next slide and talk about funds that have to be repaid or earned. Loans are the resource that you will have to repay. The full name of the program offered through federal student aid is William D. Ford Federal Direct Stafford Loan Program, which is totally a mouthful, so I'm just going to call them direct loans. In order to be considered for direct loans, all you have to do is complete your FAFSA. There are two types of direct loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. And which kind you are offered is based on whether or not you demonstrate financial need. Remember, financial need is determined when you take your total cost of attendance, or that sticker price, and subtract out your family contribution. So subsidized means that there's no interest that accrues on the loan while you're in school, but interest will accrue on the unsubsidized loan while you are in school. The student is the sole borrower on this loan, and no cosigner is needed. They are automatically eligible simply because they're going to college. The official lender is the U.S. Department of Education, but there are 6 servicers nationwide that assist in the administration of the loans. Students get randomly assigned to one of those servicers, and you work with them after you graduate and enter repayment. There is additional paperwork that students do have to complete to activate their loan, items like entrance counseling and master promissory note. Entrance counseling is an educational tool. It's designed to help students understand what a loan is and what it means to borrow. And the promissory note is the legal document promising that you will repay your loan. Schools like Providence will help your student with this paperwork, and they do not need to go find a bank on their own to activate their direct loan. The current interest rate in the direct loan program this year for the 22-23 academic year is 4.99%. Last but not least, let's talk about work study. This is the student's opportunity to earn money to help with costs while attending schools, like extra pencils, Friday night pizza. These funds are paid directly to the student and are not applied to their bill. Students are not placed into jobs, they must apply. The process on most campuses is competitive. Most colleges do have enough jobs for all the students that are interested. Occasionally, I do hear that a student can't find a job, but it's a little more like the student doesn't have any interest in the job that are available to them. Once hired, typically it is the financial aid office that helps students with their employment paperwork, and just like a regular job, the student's going to have to complete their W-4 and their I-9 within 3 days of starting their new job. Right now, most jobs here on campus start at the minimum wage set by the state of Rhode Island, which right now is $12.25 an hour. Students and their supervisors create a schedule that works with the student's class schedule and best meets the needs of the hiring department. Students can work no more than 20 hours per week, but mostly it ends up being 8 to 12 hours. Also, because these funds are meant to support a student in the year they're earning them, they do not have to be reported on the Fafsa application in the following year. So we've talked a lot about costs and family contributions and financial need and types of aid. So now I want to actually show you an example of what you might get from schools that kind of wrap all of this together. Our next slide is an actual award letter from Providence College. So let's go take a look at that. I want you all to know that there is no standardized award letter across colleges. So this means there are no rules that the schools have to abide by when presenting this information to you. So if you applied for financial aid at 10 schools, you're gonna get 10 very different looking award letters. It's going to be overwhelming and confusing on how to read and compare them. So I'm gonna focus on what key items you should be looking at so you can compare and understand them. Like I said, this is the actual award letter from Providence College, and it includes many of the items we talked about earlier. Along the left-hand side of the award letter and along the bottom, It really contains some of our educational information. It's kind of like the fine print and tries to briefly explain the most important aspect of those resources that are offered to you. Make sure you read those items carefully so you really understand what's in front of you. These sections will confirm for you if you are getting need-based or merit, if the money needs to be repaid like loans or earned like work study. And I think the most important part of this award letter, at least here at Providence, is that special message section that goes right along the bottom. This is where we try to highlight something we really want you to know about this offer. On this award letter, the message is letting the family know that the award is based on more than one attending college. As we learned earlier, when students graduate, it can dramatically change the family contribution and the financial aid of the student that is still remaining in college. Okay, on the top to the right, you will now see sticker price. Remember, this is the total cost for 1 year. It includes things that you will see on your bill, like tuition, fees, room and board, and things you won't see on your bill, like books, transportation, personal expenses. And right below that is your financial aid offer, which is comprised of grants, scholarships, and loans. Remember, that is determined by your family contributions on the FAFSA and the Css Profile. Subtract all of those resources from your sticker price and you get your net price. Net price is the true cost to the family for the first year. Net price is the figure that you can use to compare the financial aid offers between schools. The lower the net price, the less expensive that school is to you and your family. So my advice is not to eliminate a school just based on sticker price. You really don't know what you're going to qualify for and what your net price will end up being. So you may or may have not noticed, but your family contributions isn't labeled anywhere on this letter, but it sits in there. It is tucked into your net price. Ideally, your net price should be equal to your family contribution. But remember, some schools don't meet 100% of your need. So that net price is going to be higher than your family contribution since it might include the gap that a school wasn't able to fulfill. A common thing I hear from families is that the net price isn't equal to their FAFSA contribution. Remember, schools like Providence who collect the Css Profile are using a different family contribution. We're using the institutional contribution, which tend to run higher than your federal contribution. I want to highlight that schools are required by the U.S. Department of Education to have something called a net price calculator on their website. So if you wanted to get a rough idea of your net price now for a school you are interested in, you can, but not all net prices are the same. The net price calculators are not the same. The U.S. Department of Education only requires schools to have the federal formula built into their calculator. So if you use one, just keep in mind that it may only show your federal eligibility, which should be the same at every institution. Providence's net price calculator not only has the required federal formula, but we also chose to include our institutional need-based formula. So our calculator is going to tell you a lot. But remember, your estimated net price and financial aid that you get from using our net price calculator is only as good as the information that you enter. Okay, that's a lot. I'm going to actually take a short break and from talking and turn it over to Christine so she has a chance to dive into merit-based programs here at Providence.
Thanks so much, Emily. So what are merit scholarships and how are they different? You've heard a lot about your family's ability to contribute to the cost of attendance and what the FAFSA and Css Profile are looking at. When it comes to merit scholarships, it is a completely separate process than the need-based application process. Merit scholarships are given based on the work that the student has done throughout their high school career. And schools are looking at their academic profile in a number of ways. Certainly their grades, their grade point average matters. The curriculum in which they've achieved those grades also matters. So for many schools, having a 4.0 or having a 100 GPA may not be enough. It may be that schools are looking to see that that student has taken on a very challenging curriculum. And I'll certainly talk about how Providence looks at those merit scholarships or looks at the high school profile. Test scores are also taken into consideration if the school is looking at them. And so since the beginning of the pandemic, you've seen a number of schools move to this test optional policy because of access to those tests, that students weren't able to sit in a room together and take the SAT. Those tests are coming back a little bit more, and some schools are going back to requiring test scores, but many are not. Many are holding on to their test optional admission policies, both for admission and for merit scholarship consideration. So you just want to be careful to do some research into whether a school is still looking at merit or at test scores in order to give out merit scholarships. At Providence and at many of our peer institutions, we have been a test optional school for 15 years. So test scores were never really the be all and end all when it came to the admission process or in giving out merit scholarships. So that's why you see that, if applicable, in parentheses there, that sometimes the test scores matter if a student is going to submit them, but if they're not there, they simply don't come into consideration. So important to do your research about that. Now, the work that the student has done in high school will sometimes include those intangibles, okay? The review for merit can, at some schools, be a more holistic review. Schools will wonder the kind of contributions that students have made to their community, if they've taken on significant leadership roles. And those can be behind some merit awards as well. At Providence College, we focus solely on that academic profile. And so we are really focusing on both those grades and the strength of the student's curriculum. So just, quickly to talk about our merit scholarships, we do offer a range of scholarships, and for next year, that range is going to be between $22,000 and $37,000. So there are actually three levels: 22, 29, and 37,000. And about 25% of our invited students or our accepted students are offered a merit scholarship. Those students will have taken the most challenging curriculum available to them at their high school. And that context is very important to us. We're not comparing curriculums across or between different schools. And they're succeeding in those courses with straight A averages. So they really are at the very top of our invited student pool. Okay, so that's a little bit about how Providence awards scholarship. I think it's important for you to know that many schools are offering merit scholarships in the context of the applicant pool. So you've heard me say the top 25%, for example. Please know that our applicant pool changes every year. And so that top 25% this year might not have been what the top 25% looked like 5 years ago, okay? There are some schools out there that will give you benchmarks. If a student has a 3.8 GPA and a 1250 on the SAT or a 30 on the ACT, that they're eligible then for X amount of dollars. Those schools are out there. Providence is not one of them. So I want you to be aware of the differences. Okay. And again, we're looking at the context of the applicant pool. As you're thinking about different schools and how they award merit scholarships, please know that schools allocate funding differently. We've made a commitment to our need-based financial aid, and I know Emily will talk a little bit more about our gapping and the percentage of need met here at Providence. But for that reason, we're more conservative when it comes to granting merit scholarships. Not every school awards funding the way that we do, or has the same amount of money that we have to give. So there are some schools that certainly have more. There are schools that have less. What can you do to prepare for the merit scholarship process? And throughout my career, I've worked at Providence College, but I've also worked on the high school side as a college counselor. And each year I would have families come to me and say, I thought we would get more merit from this institution, or I thought we would qualify for more merit scholarship. And I would quickly go to their website and look at their, colleges often publish the levels of scholarship that they give out. And I could turn to a family and say, actually, that $20,000 you've received from that school is the highest merit award that you can receive from that school. That's all that they give out. So it's something that you can know, that you can look into. I never want families to go into this process thinking, oh, this school is a shoo-in for me. I might even get a full ride in terms of a merit scholarship if that school doesn't even offer a full tuition scholarship. Okay, so it's important to know, and to know that you can look that information up. I want you to also pay attention to application deadlines. So while you should not have additional applications to fill out for a merit scholarship, you may be asked to submit your application for admission at a different deadline. There are a couple of schools in the area that I can think of that have this kind of asterisk next to their early action deadline, that if you'd like to be considered in their merit applicant pool, please submit your application at this early action deadline. Okay, so that's, I think, the one caveat to be mindful of, that for some schools, they want to do the merit review throughout the process and want to see that application up front in that early action pool. Providence is not one of those schools. We hand out merit scholarships at early action, at early decision, and at the regular decision timeline. So that's not something that you need to worry about here at PC. I will also say that, schools don't, by and large, require an additional application for merit scholarships, but you might find additional applications or essays for honors programs. So I want to make that distinction, that typically for additional money, you're not filling out more information or writing more scholarships, but that could be something that goes hand in hand with acceptance to an honors program. There are a small handful of schools in the US that ask for you to fill out your need-based financial aid application, so your Fafsa and your Css Profile, in order to receive merit scholarship. I can't really give you a picture or a window into why those schools are requiring a need-based application for a merit-based scholarship. Providence, again, is not one of those schools. Those processes are separate, but know that there are a handful of schools out there. So something just to be mindful of and to ask. I think that's all I had to speak about in terms of merit scholarships. And so I'll hand it back over to Emily. I can see that a few questions have come in. And so again, we'll certainly respond to those during our Q&A period.
Thank you. Okay, so like Christine said, before we pop over to our Q&A, I just want to move into the next slide and kind of go over some tips and advice that we have for you today. Don't rule out a school based on that sticker price. You never know what you're going to qualify for. And sometimes higher priced schools tend to offer larger rewards, which could result in a lower net price than maybe some of your state institutions. Make sure you understand the difference between a need-based aid and merit-based aid. It's really important to know if the money that you're being offered is guaranteed for 4 years, or if it can change when the information on your FAFSA and Css profile change. Make sure you double check that with the school if it's not clearly stated on your award letter. No two schools are the same. Make sure you know what applications the school is requiring and make sure you know when those applications are due. Do not assume something you know about one school and assume that it applies to another. Prepare. You can prepare some important information right now. Hang on to those 2021 taxes or go find them and put them in a place you will remember. Apply for your FSA ID right now and make sure you can keep track of your username and password for the College Board. And don't be late. Don't be late. Please don't be late. Late applications really could mean you losing out on thousands of dollars in financial aid. The admissions process and the financial aid process is concurrent. If you wait to hear for financial aid, if you wait to apply for financial aid, until you know whether or not you're admitted, your applications are going to be late. Decisions for regular decisions, as an example, are rolled out around March for Providence College, but as I said earlier, some of those deadlines are February, December. And I think you already know what happens if you have late applications. But last but not least, involve your student in this process. I never expect a student to go through this alone, but they need to be a part of it. When they come to campus and we need something, we are going to reach out to them and not the parent. Also, most colleges stop communicating with parents once a student enrolls, once they hit 18. So make sure they're involved in the process and definitely tell them not to delete emails from us. So that's actually all I have for wrapping up. Christine, do you have anything you want to add before we pop in and take a look at some of those Q&As?
Thought that was great, very thorough, and I certainly appreciate all the expertise that you have to share with us and with our families this evening. I do want to quickly jump back to merit scholarships before I get to some other questions from our participants. One of the questions that we received is, in order to get a merit scholarship, do you need to have a 4.0 average, or do students with greater than a 3.5, for example, get merit scholarships too? And the short answer is no, you do not need to have a 4.0 average in order to get merit scholarships. At places like Providence, we do have, we are looking for that stronger GPA, again, stronger curriculum. I think our average last year was just below a 3.9. But there are plenty of schools that offer merit scholarships to students with strong, again, 3.5 is an A- average. So there are plenty of schools out there. I think if I'm going to direct students to think about their lists, the school list that they're applying to, think about those target schools and those likely schools as being the places where you are at the top of that application pool or applicant pool. And those will be the places that may reward your academic profile. Think of those reach schools as those places where you may not qualify for merit aid because, again, you're hoping to get in, So I would say to think about it and make sure that you've got a good balance of in terms of your college list, those reach, those target, those likely schools, and think about it in terms of having a financial aid likely school, a place where you might qualify for a greater amount of money. So I want to be able to then turn it back over to you, Emily. I've got some questions for you here. And the first one was about the FSA ID. If there are parents who have used an FSA ID or an email to complete the FAFSA for a child who's already enrolled, can they use that same email and FSA ID for the second child then?
So if you have an FSA ID already for like an older sibling in college, you have it. You do not have to create a new one. So you can use the same FSA ID to sign the FAFSA application of your student who is looking to be a part of the class of 2027.
Great, thank you. And could you please repeat the tax years that we will be using for applying for fall 2023 on the FAFSA?
2021, 2021.
Great. Where does the Pell Grant fall into the type of aid offered? If you have one student in college with a Pell Grant, can you assume that the next child entering college will be eligible to receive one?
So Pell Grant is actually a federal Pell Grant. So it is determined by the formula on your FAFSA application, which I talked to you a little bit earlier, should be the same no matter what institution your student's applying to. I would say very broadly and generically, if you have one student right now and they're the only one in school and nothing else changes, and you're bringing in a second student in this coming fall, then the likelihood of you also receiving Pell for that student is likely.
Financial aid is for the student and one parent. If parents are married and filed jointly, do you submit both parents' information?
So yes, if you have parents that are married, when the one parent uses their FSA ID to sign the application, in that case, it wouldn't matter which one. But when you go out, if you use the data retrieval tool through the IRS, it will pull in the information from the tax return on 2021, which will automatically pull in information for both parents on that tax return.
Great. And related, can you just go through the guidelines for divorced parents and what they use when completing the FAFSA and CSS?
Well, it's gonna change.
Okay, great.
I thought someone might start asking about some of the regulatory changes that are on the horizon. But for this last year, for the class of 2027 entering, it is the custodial parent. So it is the parent that the student lives with for more than 50% of the year. Now, going forward, there are going to be some regulatory changes where the parent who files the application may not be the custodial parent anymore. It is likely going to be the parent that makes the most money. And that is that parent's information would need to be on it. That is kind of still all kind of unraveling from the Department of Education. And we have this lovely chart about what's going to change and when. But as with anything, we are looking for those dear colleague letters from the Department of Education to wrap a little more definition behind it and how aid administrators are going to make that determination from year to year. So that's a little complicated.
Speaking of changes, Emily, I know that FAFSA will no longer be considering whether a family has more than one child in college at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Will the CSS profile and will Providence College still consider that aspect of families' finances?
So my understanding is that the applications will still ask for who's in the household and who's in college. And federally speaking, they will only consider one. From an institutional determination, that is not something I can answer at this time. I do know that many people on our campus are going over the proposed changes to see what, as an institution, we would like to do. So I cannot say with any certainty today whether or not we will follow the federal regulation and drop it down to one no matter what, or whether for our own institutional dollars, we'll keep and give the families the benefit or that break from having multiple children at school at the same time. So I would say watch websites and look, every school is going to be able to make their own decision. So if Providence makes one decision, another school may not. And again, be very careful about making assumptions, and please do that research when you apply for those schools. So I know that when Providence makes a decision, it will be uploaded on our website. So stay tuned. I wish I had a better answer than that today, because I'd like to know too.
Same. And we've had a couple of questions about timeline of application and whether, if you're applying early decision or early action or regular decision, does applying at a certain deadline give you a better chance for more financial aid? Or are you fully eligible for financial aid regardless of your deadline?
There's no advantage or disadvantage. The practice of calculating need and our distributions of funding is identical at early decision, early action, and regular decision. So if you're not comfortable and you don't want to apply early decision or early action, there's no advantage from a financial aid perspective of applying. We will consider you at any point of admissions the same.
Right. And I would say the same about merit scholarships, that we have a very consistent process. If you were eligible for a merit scholarship at early decision, you would have been at early action, and you will be at regular decision. So it certainly is a very consistent process. There's no greater chance of receiving scholarship based on deadline, and we're not handing out all of our merit scholarships to those who apply early. Good one. If we started the FAFSA today or in this recent week and it asked for the 2020 taxes, is that because it's not yet October 1st?
Yeah, if it's asking you for 2020, then you're completing an application that would be applicable to a student enrolled right now at Providence. That goes for the 22-23 year. So if you can stop that application and wait till Saturday, and then when you do that application, it will be the 23-24, and it will ask you for that 2021. So yeah,
Great.
Don't do that one.
If a parent recently retired and the pension income is lower than the 2021 tax return, what would you do in that case?
So my advice would be that your application process will be a little bit complicated in the year your student applies. So you must complete the Fafsa and profile with your 2021 information, even though it's not really reflective of your current family situation. Once you complete your applications, then you would reach out to each individual school, and each school will have a process or a reconsideration. Some people call it appeals. In your case, I would look at that as a change in income. You have a loss of income because you've had a life change, and your information currently in 22 is no longer reflective of the wage that you made in 2021. In that case, we would probably ask you for your 2022 information and use that as your base year instead. Every school does have the ability to use professional judgment in circumstances like that. The prospective process can be lengthy, and some schools will do it sooner. Some will say, I'll look at it, but I won't do it until March, which will make some families a little stressed out because your answer may not come until that like mid-April, but certainly in enough time to make that decision by May 1. So it will just be a little extra work in your first year. Do the applications as it is, and then most schools will have that process either published on their website, or you can reach out and connect and ask about appeal processes. I know for Providence, our appeal forms are on our website. They haven't been flipped over for class of 2027 yet, but if you wanted to take a peek at it now and take a look at the checklist of items, you could start gathering them now and be super ready when right after you complete your Fafsa and profile on Saturday.
Great. We have just two other questions. I recognize it's 7:30 at this point, but very quickly, does Providence and do other schools consider if families are paying for private high school for their other children?
In some cases we will, but it usually depends if the student has it's medically necessary or academically necessary for them to be at such a like a private high school. We don't do that in general because we can't apply a policy like that to every student. The Department of Education actually has specific rules about that. But on a case-by-case basis, if there is the student has a IEP or 504 or there was some kind of situation that required the family to have the student attend the private institution, social, emotional, whatever the case may be. Again, we have an appeal process in place for that, for the family to provide us with documentation. But globally, we do not. But on a case-by-case basis, we will want to know a little bit more from the family about why they needed to attend a private high school.
And then the last question is about different names. So the student has on their social security card, for example, has a maternal name, but on FAFSA, it would be the father's name. The parents are married and filing jointly. But I'm wondering if you know if a student's name is showing up differently on different forms, if that's going to lead to some hiccups in the process.
If the question is parent and student name are different, that's okay. Like student's last name is Smith, parent's last name is Jones, that's okay. I would just say stay consistent. So if the student's last name is Smith, I would make sure that it's Smith on the FAFSA, on the profile, on your admissions application. I wouldn't in one place do Smith and then another place do Smith Jones. That is where we end up seeing matching problems. And then we don't have the right student in mind and it can cause kind of delays. But simply a student having a different last name than a parent, generally there are no issues as long as the information is consistent in every place for each the student and the parent. So I hope I understood that question correctly. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I'm muted. Wonderful. So thanks so much. I want to say thanks again, especially to you, Emily, for sharing all of your expertise with us. For our families, thanks so much. We hope that this has been helpful for you to understand not only the financial aid process at Providence, but also kind of globally as you go through this entire process. I wonder, Emily, is there one more slide?
Oh, just the contact information, I think is the last slide. Just
Yes,
Q&A and cute picture of Huxley, that's all.
Great. That's what I thought. So I just wanted to encourage you to reach out if you do have questions. We'll be happy to answer those for you. And again, we are happy that you joined us tonight, and we hope to see you soon.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye.